In this daily drop, I'm going to talk about using reflectors versus Fresnel lenses. So let's go. All right, everybody, back here in the barn, and here I am again with the Aputure STORM 80C. And while this video is not specifically about this fixture, it's probably the last one that I'm going to be doing with this light in particular for a while. It's getting sent back to B&H, and I thought before I did that, it would be good to talk a little bit about reflectors versus Fresnel lenses and what my opinion is, at least in terms of which is more useful in production. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of things here. And I do think this light is pretty great. It is about $600 US, so keep that in mind. It's not the highest output light on the market with a price point like this, but the color accuracy is pretty fantastic. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and fire this up here at 100% intensity. I'm at 3200 Kelvin, and when you're using this, what I would call bare bulb, it is about a 60-degree beam angle. Okay, so it's about a 60-degree beam angle, and you can kind of see what that is. Now, the background behind me is almost exactly 3 meters away, so just under about 10 feet away. It's just a neutral gray background. And what we're going to do is take this first, which is the reflector, and I'm going to put that onto the fixture. And of course, reflectors do a couple of things. Generally, what they're going to do is they're going to, most of the time, reduce the beam angle from what you're getting bare bulb from a fixture. The second thing they're going to do generally is they're going to intensify, not only because of that narrower beam, but because of the interior of the reflector, the actual light that's coming out of it. So you're going to get a more concentrated, higher intensity light. And this is no exception. This is the reflector that comes with the Storm 80C. It is a 35-degree reflector. So we've got 60 degrees bare bulb, and then we've got 35 degrees when we use the reflector. So I'm just going to, let me just go ahead and do that right. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and strike the light again, and we're going to see that that beam angle has changed considerably. So this is a 35-degree beam angle with the built-in reflector. Of course, the advantages of a reflector are obvious, what I just discussed. The disadvantage of a reflector is it is a fixed beam angle. So in order to broaden or to narrow that beam angle, think of it like using a prime lens. You're going to have to get closer to or further away from the subject that you are lighting, whether that's a person, an object, so on and so forth. So there we go at 35 degrees. And I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. And what I have here is the CF4 Fresnel lens. It's designed specifically to use on a fixture like the 80C. And a Fresnel lens is considerably different than a reflector. It has concentric circles, and it creates a very even spread of light from the center of the light to the edges. And this particular Fresnel lens will take you from a 15-degree all the way to a 40-degree beam angle. So I have this set now to approximately 35 degrees. I don't think we're going to see an exact match. Also, because this modifier is a different type of modifier. But as you can probably tell already, one of the big advantages of a Fresnel lens is the fact that it has the ability to, in a spot flood version like this, give you different beam angles. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm just going to pop that onto the fixture and lock that into place, and then I will strike the light. And here we are at the 35-degree setting on the CF4 Fresnel. And the thing that I want to say about this is that, of course, the big advantage, again, is the fact that you have on a Fresnel lens like this something that will change in terms of the beam angle, in this case 15 to 40 degrees, as opposed to a fixed beam angle of 35 degrees on a reflector. Then you have to get different reflectors. So I want a different beam angle that's either wider or more narrow. I would actually buy different reflectors designed for said fixture that you're going to be using it with. All right, so what I want to do now, just to kind of get a sense of what's happening light level wise, is I'm going to do some meter readings. I've just got an incident meter here, just set up with a Lumisphere. So I'm just going to go ahead and strike this light. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to do a bare bulb reading from about 3 meters away. So let me just go ahead and strike that. I'll be right back, and I'll tell you what I'm getting in terms of the settings. So I'll be right there. Hold on. Okay, so at 100% intensity, I've got at 24 frames per second, really 23.976, 800 ISO, which is how my camera is set, 180-degree shutter, which is how my camera is set. I'm getting a reading of an f4 and 5/10. Okay, so for every 3/10, you're just under a third of a stop. You know, the math is there. And that's the reading we're getting bare bulb. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop on the 35-degree reflector here. This is the first time I'm doing these readings from this setup right here with the background at this distance. So just give me 1 second. Okay, so instead of an f4 at 5/10, I'm getting a 5.6 and 9/10, which is very, very close to an f8, right? So we're getting considerably more intensified light with the reflector right now. And remember, an a 5.6 and 9/10, so almost an f8. Let me go ahead and take this off, and then I'm going to go ahead and just remember that this has this silver interior here, so it's going to be different than the Fresnel, but I've got the Fresnel set up to about 35 degrees. I'm not going to say it's exactly there, but it's pretty close. And I'm going to go take a reading. Hold on. So that's a 5.6 and 7/10. So a little less light coming out of 2/10 of a stop of the fixture with the Fresnel set to about the same beam angle. Not necessarily exact. Again, slightly different in terms of how it's going to project that light, but pretty darn close. But here's the big advantage. The big advantage is that I can go to a 40 degrees, and then I can go all the way down to a 15-degree beam angle. So a much tighter beam angle here, and let's just go ahead and take a reading of that. Hold on 1 second. And at 15 degrees, I'm at an f8 and 7/10. So I'm heading on to f11 land over here. Not quite there, but you get the basic idea, right? I'm about, well, 3/10 of a stop away from f11. So that kind of shows you that we're not too far off between the two different modifiers. But in my opinion, when I take a look at a Fresnel lens, not only do I like the fall off, but if I have the choice to travel with this or this, first of all, this is incredibly compact and will weather the storm quite well. These tend to get banged around, so you have to really protect them, right? You've got this aluminum base reflector, and if it gets dented and things like that, which can happen, then that is a consideration. Also, the advantage to a Fresnel lens is, and these are, except for the reflector, these are optional accessories for the Storm ADC. With a Fresnel lens, I can actually purchase and I can add barn doors. So with that addition, you're going to get another level of control in terms of what you can do with that. So I'm just going to pop these barn doors on here, or pop the Fresnel lens with the barn doors. Come on, kid. Wakey, wakey. I'm trying to do this sort of blind right now. There we go. Okay. And strike that. Boom. And maybe we'll change that beam angle a little bit. What am I set to right now? About 30 degrees. And then, of course, what I can do is I can door down. So with the barn doors, you have a lot more control in terms of what you can do with that beam that's coming out of the light. I'm a big fan of Fresnel, lenses. I'm a big fan of Fresnel lenses with barn doors, and I think that you get a different level of control. So it's great that the fixture comes with a reflector, but this is a broader conversation. This is a broader discussion for me, at least personally. And that discussion is, should you be using reflectors or should you be using Fresnel lenses? For me personally, for the type of work that I do, I would say for my choice and also for what I do in the real world, it's Fresnel lenses all day long. And so it might be a worthwhile investment for you to go this route. I think it is. I think that you're just getting so much more creative control in terms of what's happening with your light source when you're using a Fresnel lens. And I think it's money well spent. So, yeah, I got to make sure I point in the right direction. Don't forget to, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.